Everyone's switching from ChatGPT to Claude, but nobody's using it properly. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use Claude better than 99% of people who just switch from ChatGPT and are using it like a basic chatbot. I've been using Claude for over a year now, and in this video, I'm going to teach you all the hacks and all the skills to become a power user. We're going to cover projects, skills, connectors, as well as memory, and those 1% hacks that are going to take your workflows and halve the time. All right, let's start with the setup. So I have Claude open in the desktop app, and we are just working in Claude Chat today, and you can have this open in the browser or the desktop. If you haven't downloaded the desktop app before, just jump over to claude.com/download and you'll find everything you need to download. It's available for both Mac and Windows, and you just hit download and it'll do its thing. Okay, so now we've got Claude open. Let's just jump into settings and set a few things up before we get into our workflows. So over here, you can put your name, you can select your work function, and if you come from something like ChatGPT, you can take your custom instructions from your profile and just paste them in here. If you've never set these up before, you want to include things like who you are, the tech stack that you work with. If you own your own business, tell Claude about that business. Or if you're using this as an employee, tell Claude about your role. Also include, do you want short responses? Do you want Claude to push back? All of that stuff should be in here. Next, we're going to just jump into capabilities. And so what we want to do is, if you want Claude to have a persistent memory across chats and be able to search previous chats and reference things, you just want these toggled on, because what that allows Claude to do is collect information about you, about your chats, and it'll start to learn who you are and I guess the way you like to work. And then this search and reference chat allows you to say like, hey Claude, can you just go back to our conversation 2 days ago about that spreadsheet and let's pick up where we were working before. Over here too, you can also import memory from other AI providers. So if we just hit start import, all this is a copy and paste prompt that you would put into something like ChatGPT or Gemini, and it just asks it to export all of your saved memories and context, what it's learned about you from past conversations. I will say here, clean that memory up before you bring it into Claude, because often the stuff that chat has collected about us is quite outdated. And so you may just want to tidy that up. And you can do that by saying to ChatGPT, hey, look at this list. Can you pull out anything based on our previous conversations in the last 3 months that is now outdated? And it'll give you a clear memory to import into Claude. And then you're just going to paste it in here and hit add to memory. A couple of other things down here that we want turned on. So artifacts, which we will get into later, we want these on. And what that does is allow Claude to make some really cool documents, HTML pages, all sorts of stuff that we can share and use ourselves. And this new feature, inline visualizations, if you want Claude to be able to make visuals for you, such as this one, then you just want that toggled on. Jumping back here to code execution and file creation, again, we want to have these on so that Claude can create files for us. And that's where we start to really leverage these tools. All right, and then let's jump into a few basic things before we get into the cool stuff with skills, projects, etc. Also, before we jump out of settings, if we just jump into privacy, we just want to make sure that we don't have this toggled on if we don't want Claude to use our conversations to train the model. All right, let's get into this now and start setting up some cool stuff. And make sure you stay until the end, because I've got some hacks that I guarantee you have never seen Claude do before. So if we start a new chat, we just go over here and hit the plus button. And there's a couple of things that I'll want to show you. So first up, over here, we've got this little ghost, and that's how we have incognito chat. And so if you want to ask Claude some random stuff and you don't want that kept in your memory, then you just go over to our little ghosty guy and start an incognito chat. These aren't added to your memory and they aren't used to train your models. Next, let's talk about the models. So we've got Opus 4.6 currently at the time that this video is out, Sonnet 4.6 and Haiku 4.5. And we've also got extended thinking here. So the way that I like to think about these models is Opus is like our technical lead. Any coding that you want help with, any data analysis that you need help with, Opus is the model of choice. Then Sonnet. I like to think of Sonnet as like the creative lead. Any creative writing, blog posts, email marketing, that sort of thing. Sonnet is where it's at. And Haiku, I don't really use Haiku that much, but it would be if you want fast answers, kind of if you like using Claude. like Google. And then extended thinking. So if you want Claude to go and do complex tasks for you, you can just toggle this on. There are also some of the old models available, but to be honest with you, I don't touch those anymore. Also, good to know, Opus 4.6 burns your tokens at about 3 to 5 higher rate than Sonnet. So if you are working on just basic tasks or things that don't require coding or complex analysis, then I would just have Sonnet 4.6 on by default. Over here, we have this little microphone. And so Claude has voice mode now in the desktop app and also on mobile apps. But if you've used ChatGPT, that is actually a feature that ChatGPT still excels at. So if you want to record, you just press and hold here, and you can choose here, is this connected to your microphone? You can use your phone, that's my phone there, and speak into it. Coming down to this plus button. So if you've used ChatGPT, this will feel pretty similar to you. So you can add files here, you can add to a project, which we will touch on projects later. You can also add from your Google Drive. And so you can search through your documents here and then add in something. And you can also connect to GitHub and bring something in that way. This here is research. So this is like the equivalent of deep research in ChatGPT. So if we hit this on and ask it to go into research mode, it will go out and bring back a comprehensive research report for us. Over here is styles, custom styles, and these are one of the things that are just so underrated in Claude. So we have our normal style here, but we also have these default styles that you can choose from: learning, concise, explanatory, formal, and this one that I've set up for Brooks DMs. So if we hit this create and edit styles, we've got these presets here, and we've also got my Brooks DM. But then if you go over here, you can hit create custom style. So if you've created any in ChatGPT, you can add those system instructions in here. So you can upload from a device, or you can just paste in that text, or you can get Claude to help you do this. So you can define the style here, tailor to the audience, use a specific voice and tone, or describe generally, or you can just write your custom instruction. Jumping back here, and I'll show you how my DM's style is set up. Hey Claude, can you please help me reply to this DM I have inquiring about my next Claude Masterclass? So I've just given it an example of a pretty common question I get in my DMs. And so you can see here, it's reading its skill and it's going to help me reply to this. So it started with no capitalization, which is how I write most of my DMs. And you can see the tone here. God, I love the energy. So there isn't a date locked in yet. Like that is literally how I speak, it's just so handy for quick responses. And the cool thing is these styles carry across for every chat. So you can just jump into a new chat and pick a style. So you can have these set up for LinkedIn, blog posts, anything really that you're doing on a repeated basis. And then over here, we have connectors, and I'm going to go into those later in the video, but right now I'm going to show you projects. These are essentially the equivalent of ChatGPT projects or custom GPTs. So let's set one up now. So over in our sidebar, we've just got this little folder here, and that's our projects folder. So I've got a whole bunch of projects here. This is for my podcast. It acts as like my producer and helps me with ideas. This was a demo that I did the other day for my Claude Masterclass, and I've also saved my ChatGPT memory here. This is an email strategist, a YouTube project, all sorts of things. And the way that these work is, if we jump into my podcast, we can have a look at this. So we set up a memory here. And so for this one, the memory is set as only me. So the way that this works is it collects memory within the project. So as you work within this project, it starts to collect memory about how you like to do things. So the more that you work with the project, the better the memory gets. Here are our system instructions. So if you have ever created a custom GPT or a project in ChatGPT, this is going to feel pretty similar. So for this one, I like to call my projects really ridiculous things. So this one's potty mic face. And so it's got the role here, the objective, and then it's got task prompts, so it knows what to do when I prompt it in certain ways, and then expectations and style guidelines here, and examples of show notes and things that I use this for. So you can set that up however you want. If you have custom GPTs that you want to bring over to Claude, you can paste those instructions in here and replicate it. The only thing is, unless you are on a team plan, you can't share these. That is the one kind of downfall of projects. They're not shareable in the same way that custom GPTs and projects are. This is knowledge base. So if you want to give these projects more context than what you've provided in system instructions, then we just give it access to these like extra knowledge base. And you can upload these, you can paste in text. Again, you've got access to any GitHub repos that you have written, or over here, again, we can add in a Google Drive document. And then finally, here is the chat history. So one thing about projects is all of the chats get nested here, which is a really nice way to just keep everything organized. And you can also bring in project context through into Cowork. I'm going to do another video on Cowork. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on that one. All right, so far we've covered setting up our custom instructions, memory, and projects. Now let's get into connectors and skills, because this is where we really start to leverage Claude, and this is where Claude really starts to pull away from the other large language model. So if we go over here to this little suitcase and hit customize, this is where our skills and connectors now live. So let's go through connectors first. So over here, these are MCPs. If you've ever heard of that, it's just Model Context Protocol. And Anthropic actually came up with this technology. And it's just a way, instead of us mucking around with API keys, you can just sign into the apps that you use and then connect them to Claude. So if we just hit this plus button and go to Browse Connector, here, there are a whole range of these connectors that are available to us. So you can see here, I've got my Gmail, Google, Canva, Notion. If you use Figma, you can connect that, Slack. And what this allows these connectors to do is I can say something to Claude like, hey, can you send a message in Slack? And it will do that for me. Also, Gamma, I've got that connected over here. And if we hit into this, there are so many to choose from here, so make sure you go through this and just have a look and see what you can connect. And one of the really cool things about these connectors is we get to decide the permissions on this like level here. So with my Canva, it's got listed the tools that it has available. So it can generate a design, it can generate a design structure, search designs, etc. And so here, we can just say Canva is always allowed to do this and Claude is always allowed to access Canva in this way. Or you can say this needs approval, or nope, that's not. Like, we're not letting Canva do this. And so you can do that for each of these tasks too. So you could allow all of them, or you could just have like, this one is okay to do every single time, but no, I want Claude to ask me for approval every time it tries to do this certain thing. So that just gives you a bit more control over how Claude is using these tools. So let's have a look at one of these connectors in action. So you can see that some of these are listed down here. So if I just hit from calendar, it will give me some of these pre-made prompts too. So let's ask Claude to give me tips on organizing my chaotic calendar. So you can see here, it's loading its tools, and then it's going to go into my Google Calendar now and have a look at my events and give me some tips. Let's see what it comes back with. All right, so Claude has made me this interactive tool to look at the data and give me an idea of how I can sort my life out. So overview here, and then if we hit issues spotted, it gives me all of these issues with my calendar. And then it also has given me this actionable checklist. So delete the duplicates. And this is really cool because look, I can tick all of these off. And it has also given me a rundown of the biggest issues in the next 2 weeks. This is super powerful. This is how Claude starts to act like a co-worker in your business, helping you organize, strategize, and essentially like an EA in the chat window. And what's really cool is this bit. Want me to actually fix any of these on your calendar, like deleting the duplicate or adding a deep work block. So now Claude can actually go in and do stuff in my calendar. Okay, let's jump into skills now. So back over here on the customized panel and over to skills. We have the most amazing tool available to us now with skills. So skills can be as simple or as complex as you want. So if we jump into my DM responder skill, this is what this looks like. So over here, this is the skill metadata. And so for all of these skills that I have available, when I'm chatting with Claude and it's like thinking about what it should do, it will read this part of each of these and be like, nope, that's not appropriate. Nope, that's not the skill I need. And then if I'm chatting about DMs, then it will go, okay, this one relates to Brooke's DMs replies, that's the skill I need to use, and then it will go into reading this workflow. And so that helps Claude save on tokens as well as like preventing that context rot. So a few things to note with skills. So if I want to create my skill, you just need to make sure you have this skill creator on for Claude. And this is Claude's own SOP to create skills. And so you can see here, this is its meta description. So create new skills, modify and improve existing skills, and measure skill performance. And so this feature, measures skill performance, was just recently released, which now prompts Claude to evaluate the skill after it's written it, give it a test, and then give itself feedback, which is incredibly powerful because the more we use these skills, the better they get. So you've got that toggled on, and then if we just go over here to these 3 dots, we can say try and chat. So let's set up a skill together. So a couple of things to note here. So you can see that there's the / and then skill creator. So anytime you want to call in a skill, you can either just describe it in natural language, or you can pull it in to the chat by doing / and then typing out the skill. So it's important with your naming conventions too. Make sure these make sense to not only Claude, but to you too. Hey Claude, I'm making a YouTube video on your amazing skill creator skill. I'm going to do a live demo. Let's create a really fun skill together for my audience. Let's see what it comes back with. Okay, so you can see here that it's read the skill creator skill and it's described what it does. So it says here, the skill creator lets us capture any repeatable workflow and turn it into a Claude superpower. The question is, what should we build? When you're creating skills, you'll notice this little question box comes up now too, and that's designed to extract answers out of you so that Claude can make the best possible skill for you. All right, so here's some options. We've got our vibe check skill, offer audit skill, caption to email skill, something else. All right, let's do a vibe check skill. So paste any piece of content and get brutally honest feedback. And then here it's saying, before I write a single line of the skill, I need to interview you properly. Okay, so what doesn't sound like me? Too formal, too long and rambly. All of these really. What's the one thing your content always has that others don't? We'll go real examples. How brutal should the feedback be? Diplomatic, straight shooter, full Louise Belcher. Let's go full Louise Belcher. All right. So it's saying that the skill is now written and it's doing the testing that I was talking about. So it's going to run the skill, some test content. Let's give it something. So I've just grabbed my last email caption, my last Instagram caption. So let's just paste that in. All right. So it's saying this is genuinely what did I do? Energy, self-depreciation, the sins. Honestly, slim pickings, one thing, which is the honestly. It sounds a bit try-hardy. That's it. All right, let's give it one that will actually roast me. Okay, can we try one that is, I guess, like an idea of a caption? Side note. And I want to talk about how Notebook LM is such an underrated tool, and it's not just an educational tool. You can use it to create content systems, all sorts of stuff. Let's see what it comes back with. Okay, so it's going to create some generic, in its words, AI slop, and then watch the skill roaster. Okay, and so I get the results here, but if you want to see what it actually wrote, you just click in here and then you can see this script, and this is what it has like sent to itself within the skill. Have you ever considered how AI tools can revolutionize your content creation process? Notebook LM is one of those game-changing tools. Wow, okay. So let's see what it has come back with. This smells like it was written by a LinkedIn algorithm that read too many Gary Vee newsletters. Nobody who actually knows Brooke would read past line 2. I literally stopped line 2. Here are the sins: corporate rot, hype disease, ramble tax, AI coach soup. And here's the rewrite. Notebook LM is criminally underrated, and I'm tired of people writing it off as a study tool. I've been using it to build actual content systems. Here's a real example, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that sounds like me. So now it has written the skill based on our feedback. And then what you do is just hit copy to your skills and it will save it in those skills for us. And if we hit manage, the vibe check skill is now sitting here. And so this again is metadata. And then this is the workflow. So this tells Claude every time it's doing a vibe check, this is the workflow for this vibe check. It's even created this vibe check framework, what to look out for with these sins, and give it a vibe score. This is excellent, and I will absolutely continue to use this now. The cool thing about skills too is that if we are using it and things aren't quite right, you can just give it feedback like I did there, and it will go and update that skill and the workflow for you so that the more you use these skills, the better they get. Let's jump into a more complex skill now. Okay, so if we go down here to my consult transcript processor skill. This is one I use for all of my consulting clients. So what it does is grabs a transcript from my Google Drive, all my meeting transcripts are saved there, and then it runs it through my action plan template, and then it pushes it out to Notion for me. So this basically walks through this whole workflow. So it finds the transcript using its Google Drive Connect skill. It extracts and analyzes based on the framework that I've developed, generate the roadmap, and then post to Notion. And you can see here, it's even got the database ID. And then it walks through this whole workflow in detail. So again, you can make these as complex or as basic as you want. Another hack is when you are working with Claude and you have created something that you're really happy with and you know that it's going to be repeatable, you can then jump into Claude and say, hey, can we now turn this into a skill? And it'll use all of that context that you've given it to, go back and forth, create this cool thing, and then package that up into a skill so you don't have to do all of that back and forth thing next time. As an example, I've created this client resource pack skill. So what this does is anytime I do a corporate training, it grabs the transcript and turns it into this beautiful resource as an interactive artifact, which I will show you in a minute. And so in this workflow, it's got my Right Mode brand colors. And so this is how I want each of these resource packs to look each time. And this is the required information it needs to get and create that resource pack. And if it doesn't have those from the transcript, it needs to ask me. And then this is the structure that I want it to have every single time it creates that resource pack. So if we just jump in to the example, so here is one I created from a fake training that I did. And if you want the full training on how to create artifacts like this, jump into my Right Mode membership. It is the best AI community for women out there. I will drop the link in the show notes. But what this skill does is create these interactive artifacts that are client resource packs that I delivered to a client post-training. So it's got the overview of everything we covered in the training. You can see it's got my brand colors and their name as well, the date that the training was held, and then all of the things that we covered. And there's some like copyable prompts in here too, which is really cool. And then this action plan, like for each of the staff based on, what I trained them on, and they can like tick this off, and then any additional resources. So it always includes the recording. And so again, it's grabbed all of this information from the transcript. It knows that this needs to be set up like this every single time. And then these actually link out, like this links out to my membership here. And if you want to publish these, so this is just HTML. And so if we want to publish these, we just hit publish artifact, and this one's already published, and it will give you this link that you can share, just the same way that you can share Google Drive links to the public. And so just a little bit more on artifacts now. So these, again, such a power move by Claude. Here are a whole bunch for you to go and explore. You can play games. There's life hacks. You can use these to learn something, create flashcards, that sort of thing. You can have artifacts that are interactive resources packs like what I showed you, or they can also just be documents that Claude creates and they sit over here. The final thing I want to show you is if we jump back over into this sidebar, and it's got get apps and extensions. So you can also add some really powerful extensions to Claude. So you can now add Claude to Excel and PowerPoint, and it will sit inside these programs for you. You can also add Claude in Chrome. So this is really powerful because Claude can control your browser for you. So anything that you are logged into, it can go and do actions for you. Okay, so we covered a lot. Projects, skills, connectors, memory, artifact, sorting out my calendar. And if you watch this whole thing, you were obviously someone who is serious about using AI and building with AI. Inside the Right Mode, you get a community with incredible women doing awesome stuff with AI. They are implementing this stuff. They're sharing what works. I'm sharing all of the things that I build for my own business. So you get the templates and resources to do the same for yours. I'll drop the link below, and I would love to see you in there. And if you found this video helpful, make sure you hit subscribe and like this video, and I will see you on the next one.